Agritourism and composting peels. Now that we have explored the science behind peel composting and seen some practical ways of how to compost on a small scale, let's zoom out a little bit in order to look at those peels and how can they make a difference on a larger landscape. When composting becomes part of a farm, a village, or a cycling route and becomes more of a practice into a small community, it can turn these small, simple scraps into a very, very important shared resources. And instead of each visitor figuring out how to handle their own waste, farms and rural communities can create more of a welcoming space where peels are collected, transformed, and returned to the land. In agritourisms, visitors are not just observers. They don't just look at what is there, they also take part into the rhythms of agriculture. Composting peels is one of the simplest and most meaningful ways for people to contribute to the places that they are exploring and they are part of. Today, we will look at how farms and communities use peel composting to strengthen soil, build connection, and create memorable hands-on learning experiences. A very interesting part as a beginning, why composting belongs on farms. On farms, nutrients are constantly moving. Crops draw minerals from the soils, and unless those nutrients are restocked, fertility declines over time. Composting is a natural way to close that loop, to create that ecosystem. Peels are especially useful because they bring lightweight, nutrient-rich material back to earth. Even small amounts contribute organically and in a very organic manner, which improves water retention, supports root growth, and helps soil resist stress from drought or heavy rain. For visitors, composting on farms makes the nutrient cycle visible. They want to see what they are doing and also how it reflects when they come back. They can see how scraps become soil and how soil becomes food again or produce food again. It is a full cycle process. As I said, it's a more of an ecosystem that you are creating that helps agriculture stay healthy and resilient. Now is the time to set up our community compost. And how are we going to set up the community compost? By creating hubs. Why hubs? Community composting expands the cycle beyond the farm gate. Instead of each household or a visitor managing tiny amounts of organic waste, community compost hubs brings efforts together in one place. Shared systems are easier to maintain, more efficient, and produce higher quality compost. A typical hub would work like this. First of all is the collection point. Locals, tourists, cafes, small markets, cycling groups, drop-offs, and even walking groups drop-offs. They can give more of the clean fruit and vegetable scraps. Some hubs place simple collection points along walking or cycling routes or near farm entrances where people naturally pass. It has to be a visible place signed in order for people to notice it and start contributing and more working with it. Then we are going to go to the management section. How are we going to management from just the collection to manage the community compost hub? A trained team, often a mix of farmers, volunteers, and community members, maintain this pile. They monitor the moisture, balance the materials, and turn the compost as needed. Because the pile is larger than just a simple human household bin, it stays hotter, decomposes faster, and becomes stable and rich compost more quickly. So it needs to be circulated or used also in a quicker manner. Then we are going to go from just managing the pile or the point of collection into the use. So how are we going to use the material that has already been collected? The finished compost is used in school gardens, community beds, local agriculture projects, or directly into farm fields, where farmers usually just plant their crops, and how this can be used more into the agricultural perspective. Visitors can return months later the people who are already contributed into the composting hubs, and see the results of what they have contributed. These hubs often become informal gathering points. People share tips, compare gardens, watch the compost gradually transform. The space itself becomes part of the community. And when we can just discuss more or less related to the management, as we said, the mix of farmers, volunteers, and community members, they can also contribute to the local public and interact with them to tell them more about the process itself, to attract their attention and tell them more about the process, and to show even them what was their contribution resulting for. This also creates a social and educational value. Community composting is not only a technique for improving soil, it's a social practice. When people bring scraps to the same place, conversations also starts, especially as we spoke with farmers, volunteers, and community members. Visitors ask questions, farmers share their expertise or experiences, and children can try to explore the tiny organisms that make soil more alive. It becomes a natural learning environment. These hubs often inspire. For example, they can be more workshops on composting or gardening, especially people who has more of a yard or a smaller garden that they can use. Compost challenges for school projects for young kids, plant swaps and seasonal events regarding the seasonal fruits or vegetables, and volunteer days to maintain the site. So people can contribute also with their time to maintain and give back to Earth what Earth has been already giving us. People learn how soil ecosystem functions, how food system can be circular, and how collective action amplifies individual efforts. Composting becomes a shared story, one where everyone, regardless of background, plays a meaningful role in caring for the land. It's a contribution that we are giving back to the land that has been giving a lot back to us. Agritourism sites around the world have found creative ways to integrate composting into visitor experiences. And here are some just of the examples of agritourisms. The snack loop. Visitors buy fresh fruit, juices, or smoothies at a farm cafe. Right beside the seating area are clearly marked bins for comfortable scraps. Science explains how the compost will be used, helping the visitors feel connected to the cycle they are practicing or participating in. Then we have another example of compost walks. Short guided walks take guests from one point to another point and tell them each stage of the composting process. They can feel the warmth of an active pile, smell finished compost, and learn about the organisms driving decompositions. It is a simple but memorable way to make soil visible. Then we have the community compost days. Once a month, locals, tourists, and cyclists gather to help turn this pile, the pile that was already gathered for a period of time, to prepare it for the garden beds. These events often feel celebratory, with music, snacks, and small workshops. Also with volunteers and other NGOs that more involved into the agricultural sector. They help people meet, learn, and contribute at the same time. These experiences turn visitors into active participants rather than just spectators or people who just come to watch. People leave with a scene of contribution, knowing they played a very, very small part, rather a very, very big impact in the farm's ongoing cycle. Just by contributing, that means that you are also trying to give back to the community that thrives on just each and every individual's contribution and fingerprint of their local work on the local ground. This has a very big environmental impact. Along with social benefits, community composting has a significant environmental impact. It reduces the amount of organic material entering landfills, where it would break down without oxygen and produce methane, a potent greenhouse gas. By keeping organic matter local and composting it aerobically, Communities avoid those emissions and strengthen soil health at the same time. Finished compost also boosts microbial life, supports pollinator, aids in water retention, and helps field and gardens cope with extreme weather. It enriches the soil and makes a huge impact on the ground, where it gives back a lot to us. Finished compost also makes a very big contribution into the new season crops, because it enriches the soil and gives a lot of minerals. It builds resilience directly into the local landscape. It makes a huge change into the thriving of the new plants or the new crops that is going to come up later. When many people compost together, the environmental benefit multiply, because it's a contribution, maybe small contribution by a large amount of people, makes a huge impact on the local level. Small individual scraps becomes a powerful collective resource. So we're making a huge amount of resources for next season, which is needed by each and every local ground. Now let's take a step back and recap of what we have been saying. Agritourism invites visitors to take part in real agriculture cycles. And also, community composting connects people and transforms everyday scraps into shared value. Peels and simple organic waste can enrich soil, support farms, and create a meaningful learning experiences and spaces. When visitors and locals and the farmers, volunteers of local community all contribute together, composting becomes a community practice rather than just an individual task. So it is more meaningful and more engaging. Every peel, someone adds some part of an ongoing cycle. It feeds the next harvest, supports the soil, strengthens the relationship between people and the land. It increases a lot the potential of what the land can do, and also it's another more simple and for very meaningful way of giving back to the land what we have been taking from, and enrich it to make sure that we are making an ecosystem that is going to make us survive. Because what can we care for more than the land that has been giving all to us?